Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. The night my father told me to stop trying was the last night I ever believed he could see me. He didn't shout. He never did. That was the cruelty of it. His calm, the control, and the certainty in his voice when he said, "You were never meant to lead." I stood there, holding the letter that should have made him proud. I waited for something, maybe a pause, a breath, a flicker of pride that would never come. But no. He turned away, like I was already gone. And in that moment, I realized I had been invisible long before I ever left. For years after, I told myself silence was strength. That if I kept my head down, time would prove what words never could. But silence has a way of making even the right person feel guilty. And I've carried that guilt for far too long. When his name appeared again, after all these years, folded in ink, written with the same steady hand that once erased me, I knew what it meant. He still thought I would come quietly. He has no idea what's coming. The letter came on a Tuesday morning, carried in with the salt air and the faint hiss of the Pacific outside my window. A plain white envelope seal from Savannah, Georgia. The paper smelled faintly of jasmine and dust, like something lifted straight from the drawers of the old house my mother once kept spotless. I didn't need to open it to know who sent it. Grace, my sister. It had been 22 years since I'd heard her voice. Since a single word crossed the space between us. 2 decades of silence, thick enough to choke on. I stared at the envelope for a long time, fingers tracing the edges as another memory pressed through. The night I walked out of that house, my father stood in the doorway, face shadowed by the porch light, voice steady as steel when he said, "If you leave this family." I left anyway, not in anger, but in survival. I joined the sea, the only place where silence felt honest. Now, here was again a letter from the sister who stayed behind. The one who'd watched me disappear through the curtain and never followed. For words in her careful handwriting. It's time to come home. Home. The word didn't belong to me anymore. Still, my hands trembled when I unfolded the paper, like muscle memory remembering obedience my heart had long forgotten. Take a second to reflect. Have you ever felt like you had to leave to find who you really are? Maybe you've had your own silent battles. Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Savannah greeted me with a heavy air of summer, thick with the scent of pine and river water. The white house by the river looked smaller than I remembered, its paint faded, the flag limp in the wind. I pushed the gate open, and the hinges groaned, a sound like old voices remembering too much. Inside, the hall was just as I had left it, cool, still scented with lemon oil and control. But when I saw it, I froze. The family portrait, the one I'd always seen hanging on that wall, was different. My face was gone, replaced by the dog's. I couldn't help it. A dry laugh escaped me, a sound that wasn't really a laugh at all. Some verdicts don't need to be repeated. They serve themselves forever. My father sat in his chair by the window, posture rigid, tie knotted tight as ever. The air in that room hadn't changed either, lemon polish and something colder beneath it. He didn't look up when I stepped inside. "I heard you arrived early," he said without moving. "You heard right," I answered, my voice steady but heavy, like the words were dipped in old poison. He stirred his tea, eyes fixed on the ripples, not bothering to glance at me. "Just don't make this weekend about you." I said nothing. The wall behind him gleamed with medals, each one framed, each glass spotless. But there was one square, empty, where my first Academy Award once hung. The nail still caught the light, mocking me. When I stepped back outside, Grace was waiting under the magnolia tree. Her dress brushed against the grass, and her smile trembled, unsure, before it could settle. "You came," she whispered. "I did," I said quietly. But I couldn't help but wonder if she truly believed that. Did she know why I came? Or was she, too, waiting for something she wasn't sure would arrive? Grace looked down, eyes clouded. "He didn't invite you." "I did," I replied softly, pausing. "I know. I thought maybe you thought wrong." Silence hung between us. Not the cruel kind, but the kind that came when love ran out of places to hide. The rhythm of the river slapping the shore was the only sound that dared break the stillness. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small bracelet made of shell fragments. The inside was etched with tiny, careful letters. Serve quietly. She fastened it on my wrist, the cold metal a sharp reminder of everything I once tried to outrun. It used to mean love in this house. Now it only meant survival. Have you ever been handed something that was supposed to mean love, but it only felt like survival? Tell me in the comments below. I'd love to hear if you've ever been in a situation where love and survival mixed in a way you never expected. The rehearsal dinner that evening filled the officers' club with golden light, but it didn't belong to family. The chandeliers above gleamed like they were trying to scrub the room of any real warmth, every surface polished until it reflected nothing human. I took a seat near the end, asked for water, and listened. My father presided at the head table, every gesture measured, every word precise.
He spoke of the Stone tradition.
3 generations of Navy service, men who never faltered, never questioned. When he reached me, he paused, lips curving into something like a smile. Not everyone's built for the Navy. Laughter spread across the room like it was rehearsed. Thin and quick, but it wasn't for me. It was for him. Grace's glass trembled, but mine stayed still. As the dinner went on, the laughter and the clinking of glasses felt like nothing more than an act. Just noise, trying to fill the space where words were supposed to matter. Then, when the waiter came by to refill my water, I noticed Ethan, Grace's fiancé, watching me. It wasn't mockery in his eyes, it was something else. Something searching, like a man trying to remember a name he knew he'd forgotten. Later, after the crowd had thinned, he crossed the floor. His voice was low, steady as the ocean's current. Were you ever in Guam? 2009. I looked at him, steady, not denying or confessing. Why? I asked. Because we heard a woman's voice on the comms. She guided us through the cyclone. We called her Iron Widow. The name hit me like a wave. I could feel the cold metal of the bracelet on my wrist, a quiet pulse in my veins. That was a long time ago. He nodded once, like he knew exactly what I was thinking. Some debts don't expire. The night outside was heavy, still, and sweet with salt. Jazz drifted from a bar across the harbor, but I wasn't listening to the music. My mind was far away, wrapped up in memories and things I hadn't realized were still haunting me. I walked toward the railing, the cold air kissing my skin as I stared out across the water, to the lighthouse blinking in the distance. It was as if it were reminding me, reminding all the lost ones, that even those who leave can still find their way home. Have you ever been reminded of a piece of your past you thought you'd buried? A moment that quietly surfaced when you least expected it? Drop a comment and let me know what that moment was for you. You're not alone in this. The next morning, I drove to the small cemetery by the Wilmington River, where my mother rested. The air was thick and warm, the scent of wet soil clinging to everything. Her gravestone was simple, the letters worn by southern rain. Evelyn Stone, 1949 to 2007. She served quietly. I stood there, still, no tears, no prayer. Just the habit of stillness I'd learned over the years. I wasn't there to mourn her. I was there to face something I hadn't even known I'd been avoiding. I was there to face the woman who had carried the silence for me all these years. Then a hand touched my shoulder.
Grace.
Her eyes were swollen, and she was holding a yellowed envelope, trembling as she handed it to me. "It's from Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. "He told me to destroy it." I couldn't. I opened it slowly, the paper crackling in my hands. The handwriting was tilted and careful, as though it had been written 100 years ago. "Aurelia, if you're reading this, I never found the courage to speak. You didn't abandon the Navy. You were called to serve where truth can't follow. I knew. I stayed silent, thinking I was protecting you. I was wrong. Silence isn't peace. It's paralysis." The words shook in my hands. My mother had known. She'd let me bear the shame of her silence, thinking she was protecting me. But the truth was, We'd both mistaken silence for loyalty. I looked up at Grace. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I thought you just left." "I did," I replied. "But not the way he told you." We sat there, under the oaks, the air thick and heavy with the weight of unspoken words. Light broke through the leaves, filtering down like forgiveness, and for the first time in so long, the ache inside me shifted. Still heavy, yes, but no longer sharp. Sometimes, the silence between us is louder than words. Have you ever carried the weight of silence for someone? Or maybe you've had someone carry it for you. Let's talk about it in the comments. You're not alone. The night of the naval dinner, everything felt like a performance, a ceremony of tradition, discipline, and duty. The officers' club glowed under crystal chandeliers, the laughter in the air a little too loud, a little too polished, like it was meant to drown out the truth. I sat near the end, where I always did, in the corner, away from the spotlight. My glass filled with nothing but water, the world around me blurring into a quiet hum. My father sat at the head of the table, every gesture measured, every word sharp with precision. He spoke of family legacy, 3 generations of unwavering loyalty to the Navy. When he reached my name, his lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Not everyone's built for the Navy," he said, his words slicing through the room, causing a ripple of polite laughter to spread. But it wasn't for me. It was for him. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't flinch.
I didn't react.
I just sat there, watching him, feeling the years of silence, of invisibility, pull tighter around me. When the waiter came to refill my glass, I noticed Ethan, Grace's fiancé, watching me from across the table. His gaze wasn't mocking. It was searching, like he was piecing together a puzzle he hadn't quite finished. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Ethan approached me. His voice was low, careful. "Were you ever in Guam?" 2009. I looked up at him, my heart racing, but I didn't flinch.
Why?
Because a woman's voice came over the comms. She guided us through the cyclone. We called her Iron Widow. The name hit me like a fist to the chest. Iron Widow. That was me. That had always been me. I touched the cold bracelet on my wrist, the one Grace had given me. A quiet reminder of everything I had been, everything I had done. "That was a long time ago," I said, my voice steady, but inside, I felt a storm rising. Ethan nodded, as if understanding more than I'd expected. Some debts don't expire. The night outside was heavy and still, and I stood by the harbor, watching the lighthouse blink across the water. The steady, patient pulse of the light was a reminder that even those who leave can find their way home. Have you ever been faced with a past you thought you'd left behind? Share your thoughts in the comments. You're not alone in carrying the weight of your story. If you've ever had to reclaim something for yourself, I want to hear it. The next morning, I stood in the chapel, the air thick with history and the scent of magnolia. My father sat at the front, spine rigid, the picture of discipline, the embodiment of everything he'd ever taught me. But today, I wasn't the daughter he had discarded. I wasn't the child he thought he could erase. When the officiant called for him to speak, he rose, and his voice carried like it always did, steady, unwavering. Family is loyalty. Loyalty means obedience. And then, something unexpected happened. Ethan stood up. His hands shook around the microphone, his voice crackling with emotion. "Before I say my vows," he began, his words trembling, "there's something I owe. Not to Grace, but to someone else in this room." The air thickened. A silence fell over the room like a blanket, heavy with anticipation. Ethan turned toward me. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something other than mockery. Recognition. Respect. "In the Guam cyclone of 2009, he continued, "my team was trapped. A woman's voice guided us. We called her Iron Widow." The room went silent. I could feel the eyes of everyone on me, but I didn't blink. I didn't flinch. I rose slowly, my hand raised in a small, precise salute. The entire room stood with me, an acknowledgement of a past that had never been spoken. My father remained seated, his glass shaking in his hand. He had no words, just silence, and it was the loudest thing in the room. After the dinner, I walked outside, the air cool against my skin. The night was quiet, but the weight of years, of silence, of shame, of rejection, had finally been lifted. My father, for the first time, understood that silence no longer held power over me. It had no claim on my life anymore. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. Let's connect and build a community that values truth, resilience, and the strength to finally break the silence.